Good morning, Bay Area family. Hope you guys are doing well. To those online and in Odenton and in the chapel and here in Annapolis, we're so glad that you are with us today. My name's Aaron. I'm one of the pastors, and we are excited to have you with us and to be continuing a series about the book of Judges. I have a question for you as we're getting started. I don't know if you've been like this before or you experienced this, but pretty frequently I get to work and realize that I have no recollection of getting to work. How I got there, whether or not I avoided the small children in the way, whatever. Like, it's a terrifying thought. You realize, like, oh my goodness, I was on autopilot. And nothing jarred me from that until I was at work. And you're like, oh no, what have I done? Okay? That's a scary feeling. But I know oftentimes we get into these little ruts of our brain, and nothing but a shock will get us out of those ruts. And I think of a story like this from my childhood. My mom, one time we were young, and it was wintertime, and we had those stretchy gloves, that kids wear that are not helpful at all against the cold or the wet, that we still wear, whatever. You can tuck them in like a little pair of socks or something. We had made a big mess with those. My mom was picking them up, and as moms do, I guess. And so she was picking up, and she reached and grabbed one that only after the fact realized that as it turned its head and bared its fangs, it was actually a bat. So she's screaming, and we all run in there, what's going on? Now there's a bat in the house, and everyone's freaking out, and it was a really terrifying experience for everyone involved. And this was free therapy for me. But no, so it's just crazy. You're just in the routine of picking up, and all of a sudden it's a bat that's in your hand. You know what I mean? It's what a wild moment. And sometimes it takes something like that to kind of shock us, to wake us up of wow, my brain was somewhere else, and now I am very much present with the animal that's in my hand, So it takes something extraordinary at times to wake us up from our autopilot life. And I think our passage today from Judges is intended to do that for the people of Israel. So go ahead and turn with me, if you would, to Judges chapter 4. Judges chapter 4. We're going to be in Judges 4 and 5. And in these two chapters, the author brilliantly uses surprise and unexpected twists to make his point blatantly obvious for the original audience. And I'm hoping it becomes obvious to us today as well. If you weren't here last week, let me catch you up about what's going on in the book of Judges. We're walking through this book, and this is a period of time in Israel's history between the time of Joshua and Moses, and the time of the kings, okay? So that's this period of time in between those sets of leaders is the period of the judges. And the only job that the people of Israel had during this time was to kick all of the bad guys out of the promised land, to kill them and to clear them out of the land so that they could possess it. But they do not do that. And instead of clearing them out, they start blending in to look like the bad guys until they get to the point where they give up on following God completely. And it doesn't end well, okay? Incomplete obedience, we said last week. Wow. Incomplete obedience led to complete compromise. That's what we said last week. We didn't say anything about coughing. We said this. And so incomplete obedience. In other words, they did not clear out the land like they were supposed to, and it led to their complete compromise. They got to the place where they gave up on obeying God. And this happens over and over again. In fact, it's so repetitive that Ariane awesomely got me some water. Ariane, you're awesome. She loves attention, so just go ahead and give her a round of applause. Most people who take photos just love it when people look at them. It's great. They love it. So anyway, this cycle happens a bunch, and we went over this last week, but it starts with compromise. They do the wrong thing. They don't fully obey, and that leads to oppression. The bad guys that they left in the land take them over as judgment from God. Then they cry out to God, and he would raise up a judge or a military leader who would then, through military prowess, give them victory, and they would conquer the bad guys, and that leads to a period of peace. Then they would go back into compromise, and it just continues to spiral, getting worse and worse with every rotation of the cycle. That is the cycle of the judges. And so by Judges chapter 4, our passage for today, this cycle has already happened 3 times with 3 different judges. And it gets a little more bizarre with each judge, but at this point in chapter 4, it takes a hard left, and from here on out, it is bananas, okay? This is the big first hill on a roller coaster, and once you go over this first hill, you're flip and you're upside down for the rest of the ride. It's crazy. So let's dig into chapter 4. And as you go, you're going to notice I'll give some commentary from chapter 5. because chapter 5 is actually just a song written after the victory of the people of Israel. Spoiler, they win, okay? But they write a song about it, and it actually gives some details, some color commentary on what happened in chapter 4. So we'll kind of blend them together, and hopefully it makes sense as we go. So let's read Judges 4, 1 through 3, and get the context. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. Classic. This is so Judges. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hatzor. And the commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. For he, that's Sisera, had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. So this is a totally classic introduction to a Judges story at this point. You can see all the components of the cycle starting to happen. Their sin led to oppression from the king who should have been wiped out a long time ago but was not. And so here we are with this general named Sisera. And Sisera ends up being the big bad guy in this story, much more so than Jabin. Sisera is the bad guy. And he's really scary because it says he's got these chariots, which the Israelites don't have. And chariots are really good for controlling the roads, the means of transportation. And we actually find from chapter 5 that Israel is so oppressed during this time, they stop using any main roads, which in this time, that's like a really big deal. That would be a big deal now. It's especially a big deal then. They're traveling on byways and like through the forest. This is not good because this guy is oppressing them. And he is oppressing them because he's scary. He's got these chariots, but he's also known actually for being sexually violent. That's where this gets pretty serious. We actually know from chapter 5, it's crazy. The song, the victory song, describes what Sisera's mom was probably thinking when he doesn't come back from battle. Again, spoiler alert, he dies, and mom is waiting for him to return, and so she thinks to herself, I wonder what's keeping him. Why isn't he returning? And the thought that pops into her mind is like, oh, I know what he's doing. I know why he's not back yet. He's doing what he always does after battle, which is, it's hard to say and hard to believe, he's doing his normal thing. He's raping the women that he's captured. That's his mom. His mom takes comfort in thinking he must be doing his normal thing. This is a bad dude. Bad dude. Bad time for Israel. And so who's going to lead them out of this? How are they going to escape this guy? Well, the next step in the cycle is usually that God raises up a judge. A judge, remember, specifically is not just a leader. They are a regional military leader. Okay, that's what a judge is. And they're going to lead the army, kill the bad guys. So if you want to know who the next judge is, just ask yourself, who's leading the military right now in Israel? And we find out the leader of the military, his name is Barak, son of Abinoam. Doesn't that sound epic? Barak, son of Abinoam. And Barak means lightning. Barak, the lightning man of Abinoam. He flashes across the sky with deadly force, powerful, fast man of lightning. Right? Barak. I mean, he's for sure the next rescuer, right? I mean, come on. The lightning Barak, son of Abinoam. And here comes our first surprise. Judges chapter 4. Who's leading? Now, Deborah. I'm sorry, who? Deborah. Who is Deborah? She is a woman. Thank you for the clarifier. Okay, a woman who was a prophetess. Okay, very clear, not a man. And the wife of Lapidoth. Could you get any clearer here? Female name, a woman who is a prophetess and the wife of Lapidoth. What is happening here, okay? This is absolutely crazy. The author's intentionally stacking all these things at the front of the sentence like, yeah, she's a woman. Get used to it, okay? That's what he's saying here. And I'm telling you, the surprises are just about to get going here. Barak's the general, but who's the judge? A woman. And don't worry, we'll talk about the implications later. Just know, for now, this is incredibly culturally shocking. It's shocking. And it breaks the pattern that we've already gotten into of the judges. Every Israelite who is reading the story and tracking with what's going would be like, whoa. Deborah? A woman? And please don't be insulted by this, okay? I'm not meaning it to be demeaning. It's just incredibly culturally unexpected. Now notice, God does not apologize for this. He doesn't give any disclaimers about why this is the case. In fact, in this entire story, Deborah is not given one word of bad press, not one. And her name means Honeybee. Honeybee. Nothing scary about a honeybee, right? Wrong. She is a beast. Float like a butterfly, sting like a Deborah, okay? She don't play. So what's she up to in chapter 4, verse 4? She used to sit under the palm of Deborah. Sister's got a tree named after her, okay? She sits under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the people of Israel came up to her for judgment. So what she's doing? Well, she's judging. She's settling the disputes that are too difficult for the heads of families in their area or groups who couldn't decide what the will of the Lord is. She is giving them. She's speaking on behalf of God. And you cannot miss the eyebrows that would have been raised by this situation. At this moment, people are on the edge of their seats. They're sitting up. How does this play out? This is like I have a live bat in my hand moment, okay? This has shocked you out of your system and you're looking. But we're just getting started with the surprises. What does she do? Verse 6. Here we go. She sent and summoned Barak the lightning man, son of Abinoam, from Kedesh Naphtali, and said to him, she summoned him and says, hasn't the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go, gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 people from the men of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun, and I will draw out Sisera, the bad guy, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Deborah is giving the word of the Lord to Barak by telling him, go, get going on gathering these troops. And from what we can tell, it seems like this is not the first time that Lightning Man is hearing this command. He just ain't done it yet, right? And Deborah, being the leader that she is reminding him like, hey, this is your responsibility. And how does Lightning respond? Barak said to her, if you go with me, I'll go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. This is awkward, okay? Lightning Man needs Honeybee or he won't go. And honestly, I'm not trying to be cute with these names. These are what their names mean, and the original audience would have been catching this irony that I'm trying to help you feel. The commander of the army will not go unless Deborah goes with him. He's scared. But why is he scared? That's weird. God has already said, I will go with you. He told them where to go. He told them how many guys should go with him, and he told them what the outcome would be. Why is he scared? Why is he still waiting around? Not a lot of lightning here, okay? The irony is thick. And this hesitancy from Barak ends up becoming a theme that we have to catch. This is important. This is Israel's leader, their military leader. He is unwilling to do what God commanded. He's unwilling to do it. And remember, this is a book that is full of people compromising. They're stopping short of obedience. And remember, this isn't Joe Schmo. This is the leader of the military. Not a good sign. So how does Deborah react to this? Well, I am implying that she's probably a little sarcastic. Maybe she's rolling her eyes here. This is how I read her tone. She says, I will surely go with you. Okay. I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, here comes a rebuke. This is important. The road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. Into the hand of a woman. Interestingly, Honeybee is willing to go hold the lightning man's hand so he can obey, but there's a massive slap in the face. Barak was unwilling to work with God, so God says, I will work around you now. Barak doesn't get to do the victory lap afterward. Instead, a woman will get to do the victory lap. I don't know about you, my money is on it being Deborah at this point in the story, okay? Probably going to be Deborah, but we will see. Judges chapter 4, verse 9. Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kedesh, and Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kedesh, and 10,000 men went up with him at his heels, and Deborah went up with him. So they do it. They summon the troops. They're heading into battle. Pretty good-sized army, 10,000 men. They're ready to do their thing. This is the number of guys that God told them to get, but there's a sense of letdown here. And you wouldn't know that unless you read chapter 5. What we find out is some of the tribes didn't show up. There are actually 4 tribes that are given the invite to come to this battle, and they don't come. They don't send any guys. Here's what it says in chapter 5. And among the clans of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. AKA, we gonna think on it a minute. They don't do it, okay? Why did you sit still among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling for the flocks? Gilead, that's east Manasseh, they stayed beyond the Jordan. And Dan, why did he stay with the ships? Asher sat still at the coast of the sea, staying by his landings. Look, they get the invite, they just don't go. They go about their normal lives, tending their sheep, fixing their boats. And we're back to this main theme again. Again, what we have here is people unwilling to do what God commanded. And before, it was Israel's leader, Barak. Now it's not just Barak, it's also Israel's people. They are unwilling to do what God commanded. We cannot miss this moment. It's hugely important. What happens next after this disappointment? Well, Sisera, he's the bad guy. He gets all excited. He sees the troops are out there getting amassed. He gets his guys ready, all the chariots. They're like, we're going to go fight Barak and Deborah. And here we go. And Deborah said to Barak, once again, issuing orders, she says, up, lightning man, let's go. For this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you? So here we go, finally gets moving. Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. And the Lord routed Sisera and his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and he fled away on foot. So once again, Deborah's calling the shots. Lightning Man is not quick on the draw, but it seems like things go well in this battle. Chapter 5 actually tells us that there was a rainstorm that overflows the river Kishon, and it floods the plain, and so the chariots are worthless, and Israel is winning, and they're doing their thing. And it looks like the good guys are winning big time, except they can't find Sisera. He's gone. And that's no bueno, because that's the one guy you got to kill, is Sisera. And so where does Sisera retreat to? Who can he trust that's nearby? Where does he run? Well, here's what we find out. But Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Who is Heber the Kenite? Okay. Well, there was a peace between Jabin, the king of Hatzor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. So Heber the Kenite is this non-Israelite guy who lives near the Israelites, who has made a treaty with the bad guys. So he's a turncoat, and Sisera knows I can trust this guy. So this is the place that he decides to run to, Heber the Kenite's tent, whose wife is Jael. He runs there, he meets Jael, the guy's wife, and what Sisera is about to find out is that staying and napping at Jael's place is a bit of a headache, okay? And if you know the story, you get that joke. If not, you'll get it in just a minute, okay? So what happens? It says, Jael came out to meet Sisera. So here she is. She comes out to meet him. She says to him, turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid. So he turned aside to her into the tent. Remember, this is an ally. And she covered him with a rug. Oh, it's so cozy. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. I've been running for my life from the Israelites. And she says, great. She opened a skin of milk. Ooh, upgrade. Not water, but milk. In fact, we find out from chapter 5, she brings him the milk in the fine china. Okay? She's rolling out the red carpet. And she gave him a drink, and she covered him up. And she said to him, and he said to her, he's like, hey, stand at the opening of the tent. And if any man, by this he means a male soldier, if any man comes and asks you, is any man, literally any man here, tell them no. Okay? All right, so here, what we got on here? This all seems on brand. She's making him comfortable. Milk is a nice touch. It's on the china. Everyone's comfy. Sisera's relaxed. Jael's no threat, right? He says, look out for any men, okay? Make sure no men come by. If they're asking for any men, tell them that there's no men. And she's like, I got it. I will make sure there are no dangerous men who come to this tent. And then this happens, okay? What do we have? Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand. It's kind of weird. Maybe she's going to repair the side flap on the tent. It's been bothering her lately. We'll see. What happens next? She went softly to him. I don't know. Bandage his wounds. What does she do? Went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness. So he died. No duh. So, what just happened? That's in the Bible, okay? A housewife just maniacally plotted the assassination of a war criminal by soothing him to sleep and pounding a stake through his head. Oh my goodness. Remember, I said there was a ballad written about this moment. The next chapter is a song. It describes this moment in excruciating detail. I have set it to music. I'll sing it here for you now. She sent her hand to the tent peg and her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. Between her feet he sank, he fell, he lay still. Between her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he fell, dead. Yeah. Something tells me they're not teaching that in the pre-K class today. This is wild, people. This is a bloody mess. What happens after this? Well, Judges 4, and behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, so he comes running up to the tent, Jael went out to meet him and says, hey, come, I will show you the man whom you are seeking. Conveniently leaves out that his head is attached to the ground at this very moment. So he went into her tent, maybe draws his sword, went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead. Vastly understated, with the tent peg still in his temple. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. Yeah, he did. Right? Barak comes running up and he's like, and Jael's like super chill. She's like, yeah, let's see what he's doing in there. Oh, he's dead? Interesting, And the people of God are delivered, but they are not delivered by Barak, the lightning man, son of Abinoam. They are delivered because Jael prevailed. Another plot twist in this insane story. Yes, Barak's enemy is dead, but God worked around him to get it done. In fact, it's a non-Israelite woman who does Barak's job. That is a plot twist. But remember, we kind of knew this was coming, right? Deborah had told Barak, you're not going to get the glory for this. The glory is going to go to a woman. My money was on Deborah, but nope. Another plot twist, a different woman we didn't even know was there yet. The glory goes to Jael. Check out her line in the victory song of chapter 5. Most blessed of women be Jael. It sounds like they're talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. Jael, the tent peg lady. Most blessed of women, the non-Israelite, previously traitorous woman, does the victory lap. And what's the result for the people of Israel? Verse 31 of chapter 5. And the land had rest for 40 years. Peace, deliverance is brought. Deborah still at the reins. Things go well under her leadership. Until, of course, the moment she's dead, and the cycle starts over with another person that you might have heard of by the name of Gideon. And that is a story for next week. The intrigue. You can read ahead if you'd like. But wow, that is a wild ride, right? I mean, we got to take a deep breath, look back over this story and see what should be standing out from this story. Okay? As I read it, there's at least one main theme that we cannot miss from this story, and it's this. The message of the story, the message is in the contrasts. There are right and wrong ways to respond to God. The message is all wrapped up in the contrasts. There are right and there are wrong ways to respond to God. The idea that some people are responsive and some people are slow to obey is made obvious by the contrast between the men and the women in this story. Cultural expectations of manhood, womanhood, and obedience and all the rest are shattered all over the place. And as they happen, each time it reinforces the main point that God was calling his people to action. But Israel's general and certain tribes are indecisive, unresponsive, and unwilling to obey God's call. But the two women in the story, Deborah and Jael, on the other hand, they act swiftly, they act decisively, and they do so willingly. Just look at the contrast. In the song again afterwards, look at how the tribes that don't respond and how Jael, look how they're talked about in contrast. The tribes that didn't respond, curse their inhabitants thoroughly because they did not come to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. But most blessed of women be Jael. Israel is largely in a state of disobedient unresponsiveness to God, but God is still going to accomplish his purposes by choosing to use those who will willingly obey. And in this story, who God chooses to use to accomplish his plan would have stunned the original audience. The good guys in this story are not guys at all. They're women. The women are themselves the plot twist, and their obedience sits in sharp contrast to their surroundings. As I study this book, I would say Deborah is arguably the best leader in the whole book. And then in a shocking turn of events, this woman functions as a wake-up call to the people of Israel, because what she is everything that their leaders are not. I mean, you could literally think about it as a chart in terms of a contrast. She is obedient, they are disobedient. She is willing, they are unwilling. She is decisive, they are nervous. She is responsive, they are sluggish. And she is also a she. She's a woman, and they're men. And then you add the layer that Jael brings to this story. She's not even an Israelite, she's a Gentile. It's all about contrasts. The storytelling here is just amazing. It's all about the fact that there's a right and a wrong way to respond to God. But look, I know some of you, maybe you grew up in church, you've been around for a while, and some of you can't concentrate because you're panicking about the cultural implications for women in leadership in the 21st century. Okay, I get it. But let's just pause and zoom out here. What can we gather from this story about God's view of women? Most importantly, this story clearly demonstrates God values women. He does. And I can't overstate how culturally unexpected and unusual this would have been. But God, in this Old Testament story, unapologetically, powerfully uses Deborah and Jael as part of his plan. And look, we don't need to get caught up in what this means for church leadership today and all these kinds of questions and debate. I'm not wanting to stir that up at all. Today, I just want us to marvel at the fact that in a society dominated by men, and in a period where sexual violence had been part of the oppression of Israel, that God used a female judge and a non-Israelite housewife to literally crush the enemies of God. It's amazing. And look, last week I told you not to look at these judges as heroes, but if you're gonna do that, Deborah's your girl, okay? Feel free to look up to her. You should not do that with almost anyone else in this story, but keep her in mind. She is not the point of the story. God used her obedience to bring about Israel's deliverance, but the story itself is emphasizing that God will bring deliverance with whoever is willing to be used by him. If the military is fast or they are slow, he will get it done. If the tribes want to fish or they want to fight, he will still get it done. God is going to do his work, and he will find the people to get it done. So what does this mean for us? I'd say it this way, that God is at work in the world. He's at work in the world. And you can work with him, or he can work around you. You can work with him, or he will work around you. God was at work in this story. Barak is unwilling. The tribes are unwilling. So God simply works around them. They're slow to respond in obedience, but God doesn't stop his mission. I mean, think about this. In an alternate universe where Barak decides to be responsive to God, God doesn't have to work around him, and Jael maybe doesn't even show up in the story. But instead, Barak's sluggish obedience results in a consequence of a missed chance to play the part that God intended the military leader to play. And for the tribes that didn't show up, and everyday life was too distracting for them. Their faith wasn't big enough to step out of the mundane and to step into what God was doing. So they get rebuked. They get punished by God. Because when a community is compromised, what happens is that there's an unwillingness to respond to God willingly and rapidly. And that doesn't stop God's work in the world. It just changes who he uses to get his will done. And so I think our community, our family of faith here at Bay Area, we need to do the hard work of reflection, both individually and collectively. Do we want to work with God as he moves in our day? Do we want to see God work and we work alongside of him, or do we want to see him work around us? when it comes to us seeing those around us come to faith in Christ, or when we want to see faith ignited in the heart of our kids, or we want to see justice done to those who are wrongfully accused, or we want to see healing brought to those who are broken, do we want to be used by God through obedience to his plan? Or do we want God to find another way around? Will we allow our small faith and our day-to-day distractions to keep us from stepping in to God's work in the world? And I can't say exactly what your step of faith or obedience might look like. It might be as simple as cultivating a sensitive heart to God, where you better hear and respond to his promptings in your life as you spend time in his word and in prayer and in community. Just developing a heart that hears God at all and then chooses to obey. It might look like a small step of faith. Talk to your neighbor about Christ. Invite him to a conversation. Maybe you go on a short-term trip that we've talked about, somewhere around the world to the nations to see God at work in the world. Or maybe you run for office and see a policy undone or a policy written. I don't know what it could be. I don't know what it looks like for you. But I can tell you that God is no less at work today than he was in the time of Deborah. He is still looking for those who will respond to him in obedience, even when it's culturally inconvenient, even when it means running into a battle. Will we work with and for God's glory, or will we allow disobedience to keep our community from the powerful experience of being used by God to advance his kingdom? The choice is ours in our community, and I'm praying that together we make the right choice. Let me pray for us. Lord, you have chosen to work in so many ways throughout history. Even when people are willing, full of faith, and step into obedience, we rarely have an example of somebody who doesn't at some point massively mess it up. But it has just never derailed your plan. And so we're offering ourselves as a faith community, as a family, and as individuals to your service. In all of our imperfections, in all of our doubting, you still send us, and we're saying we are ready and willing. We say, here we are, send us. We say, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. We're ready to respond unironically with lightning speed to your requests. Give us the faith to do it by your Spirit, through your grace, to your glory, not so that we somehow feel better about our relationship with you, but because we know it pleases the Father who sought us out when we were your enemies and brought us into your family and somehow wants to use us. We want you to know we want it. In Christ's name, amen. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here. To those online in Annapolis, thank you guys. For one thing, I did forget to mention, some of you have asked, you're very gracious and kind. My wife is pregnant, and we're having the baby scheduled C-section on Wednesday, so I will not see you next week. I'll be at the hospital, but thanks for your prayers. Excited for boy number 3. Thank you guys.